Hello, welcome to another Maths Wizard video. Today we're going to be looking at solving quadratics by factorising. So just a reminder of what a quadratic is. So we've got a quadratic expression here which has n squared plus 7n plus 10. Now what you might be asked to do is just to simply factorise this, which means you've got to put it back into brackets. Now the quadratics will always be two brackets. And the way to work out what's in your brackets is like this. If you look at the number on the end, you need to find two numbers that multiply to give you that number, and the same two numbers must add to make your number that's in the middle of this expression. So if we look at 10 on the end here, well, 1 times 10 is 10, but 1 add 10 gives you 11, so it would have to say 11n in the middle. So we know it can't be that one. But 2 times 5 gives us 10, and 2 add 5 gives us 7. So our brackets are going to be n add 2 and then n add 5. Typically, I would say in most exams they tend to use the letter X though, but this I just thought this was a nice colour-coded picture to kind of illustrate this. Okay, so remember, the numbers in your brackets have got to multiply to give you the number on the end of your expression. The same two numbers have to add together to give you the number in the centre. Okay, well, now we're going to take this one step further by solving a quadratic equation by factorising it. You'll see here we've got a quadratic equation which is slightly different to the previous slide that I used there because we have an expression there. The reason it's an equation is because we've got an equal sign on the end. So we're being told that this is equal to 0, and the ones on foundation will be like this. You won't be asked to solve anything too complicated. You'll be asked more complicated ones on the higher paper. So if we take a little look at this then. So remember, this is going to be a double brackets. Now if there's an addition all the way along, they're going to be additions in each bracket. So if we look at 35 on the end, we need two numbers which multiply to make 35. The same two numbers must add together to make 12. So if we go like, well, 1 times 35, we know it can't be that, because 1 out of 35 gives you 36. We could have 7 times 5. Now that does work, because that does multiply to make 35, and 7 add 5 does make 12. So we're going to have x add 7 in one of the brackets, then x add 5 in the other bracket. Now, if they were just asking you to factorise, you'd be finished now. But we want to go a little bit further. We're being asked to solve this. Now, we would usually have two values for x on a quadratic. And the reason for that, if you think about when you draw a quadratic graph, it will either look like this or it will look like this. So it will be a curve, which is why when we solve quadratic equations, there's two possible values for x, essentially, because you will see that you can see that here, look. So whenever you have a y, whenever you're trying to work out a value for y, you can see that if you draw a line from there from each side of the curve, it will meet the axes in two different places. So that's why. So if we look at our first bracket now, because this is going to be equal to 0, we've got to make sure that each bracket adds up to 0. So we're going to have minus 7 here in our first bracket. So x is going to be minus 7, and that's because minus 7 add 7 equals 0. And then we're going to have minus 5 in our second bracket, because minus 5 add minus 5 does give you 0. Okay, so when they're additions inside the brackets, it's going to be a negative number essentially. So you just need to take the numbers in the bracket, and then the x is going to be the negative equivalent of that number. Okay, so nice and easy, really. Now where it does get slightly more complicated is when it's not an addition all the way along. So you can see on this one we've got x squared minus 13x add 30, that equals 0. Now this is where our negative number rules come in. Okay, so the thing to think about here is we've got an addition on the end, but there's a subtraction in the middle. So that will definitely mean they're both negative, because remember, you can do a negative times a negative to get a positive. Okay, so if there's an addition on the end of the equation and there's a subtraction in the middle, you're dealing with two negatives within your brackets. So let's have a look at what multiplies to make 30. So we could have, I don't know, minus 6 minus 5. So minus 6 times minus 5 does give you positive 30, but it doesn't work with minus 13, because that would make minus 11. You would have to say minus 11x in the middle. We could have minus 10 and minus 3. Well, that does make minus 13. So now that 10 can go there, 3 can go there. Now once again, we need to make both brackets equal to 0. So we've got x minus 10 here, so that's just going to be positive 10. Because if you do 10 take away 10, you end up with 0. So if you've got a subtraction in your brackets, your x is going to be positive, essentially. And here we'd have to do 3 minus 3 to make sure that that bracket was equal to 0. So x is going to be 3 in that situation. Okay, final one then. Now you'll notice this time there's a negative on the end but an addition in the middle. So if there's a negative on the end, straight away that tells you that one of the brackets will be an addition, one of the brackets will be a subtraction. So we need to try and find some numbers here that make minus 44, essentially. So let's think. We could have 11 and 4. Now you've got to bear in mind there that one of those has got to be positive, one of those has got to be negative. So let's think, well, minus 11 and positive 4. Well, minus 11 add 4 gives us minus 7. Okay, so we know it can't be that one, because if you do minus 11 and you're adding 4 to that, it takes you to minus 7. So if that said minus 7x in the middle, would be on the right path. So let's flip it the other way around. We could have 11 and minus 4. Now that does multiply to make minus 44, and it also adds together. So we've got 11 add minus 4. That does take us down to positive 7. So it's going to work. It's going to work for both of our brackets here. So we're going to have x add 11 in our first bracket, x minus 4 in our second bracket. Now we've got to make each bracket equal to 0. So remember, we've got a positive here, we've got add 11 here, so minus 7 add 11 will equal 0. And then here we've got 4 take away 4 to make 0 in that second bracket. So x will be minus 11 or positive 4 in this final example.